Welcome to yet another session of the Tribal Design Forum. Tribal Design Forum is a community of multidisciplinary designers and creative professionals from various parts of India. And we have been regularly meeting at this platform every week for the past 3 years to interact with domain experts, learn from them in an effort to find ways of using art, design, and technology for the benefit of our communities. In fact, Tribal Design Forum has curated some of the best work of artists, designers, and other creative professionals who have spoken earlier on our platform to select the best 31 of them and is currently organizing a month-long online festival that showcase and celebrate the contemporary tribal imagination from 1st to the 31st of August, every day at 7:30 p.m. IST. More details can be found at tribaldesignforum.com. These sessions are also live streamed on our YouTube channel. Today we have our guest speaker, Kanishta Kujur. Kanishta Kujur, a versatile designer, will deliver a presentation on her innovative work in design sprints for generative AI-based app development and other projects. In this talk, Kujur will share her experiences in Milan, where she led a design sprint focused on developing a cutting-edge app using generative AI technology. She will detail the process from initial discovery to testing, highlighting the key strategies and methodologies used to bring the app concept to life. Additionally, Kujur will discuss her involvement in prototyping enterprise software, showcasing how she navigated the complexities of user experience and interface design in a corporate setting. She will also delve into her role in facilitating design thinking capacity building workshops. She will explain how these workshops were tailored to help individuals from various teams to develop creative problem solving skills and foster a culture of innovation within their organizations. The presentation will conclude with a 30-minute Q&A session, allowing the audience to engage with Kujur on topics such as the generation of Gen AI in app development, best practices for prototyping software, and the benefits of design thinking in a multidisciplinary environment. The presentation by Kanishta will be of 30 minutes, followed by a 30 minutes of Q&A session. Please feel free to put your questions or comments in chat while the presentation is on. We'll be keen to take up your questions with Kanishta in the Q&A session. Due to paucity of time, we shall be able to take in the first 5 questions that appear in the chat box. So keep your questions ready to make the session an interactive one. Kanishta, we're delighted to have you come and speak with us. We look forward to a journey of tomorrow with you. The floor is all yours.
Hi, thank you, Anupam. Johar to everyone. Thanks for having me here. Let me just share the presentation. Yeah. So today I'm here to talk about design sprints, a bit about enterprise tools, my brief interaction with generative AI-based applications, and a few more related things along with that. So thanks for having me here. I would like to begin with an introduction to who I am. So I was born and brought up in Ranchi, Jharkhand, and I belong to the tribe Orao. Um, Growing up, I don't think I knew anyone who was from the design sector. I just happened to stumble upon it, and I pursued it during my textile design bachelor's degree from NID Ahmedabad. Post that, I worked with a lot of communities, craft communities spread across India, and uh, I guess I just wanted to expand my horizons, which took me to strategic design, master's degree in Politecnico di Milano, Italy. Um, I Post my studies, I also worked in Siemens Healthineers, Germany. So I was able to apply design thinking methodologies to a varied sectors, from developing new businesses to design workshops, also product strategy during my time in Italy and Milan and Germany. Now I am back in India as a design researcher and strategist, and exploring the opportunities in India in the sector. So to begin with, I would like to explain what I learned in design thinking methodology and rapid prototyping before jumping into my master's thesis, which was on developing the process for generative AI-based app development. So to begin with, we learned about design thinking in depth. Design thinking, I'm not sure how many designers are here, but I feel design thinking is a great tool that is not just a great tool for designers, but also people from different disciplines, uh, and it helps in problem solving in a very creative way. So I would like to share the basic principles of design thinking here. Um, the the image over here represents the Stanford D School design thinking model, but there are other variations of this as well. There are there's one by IDEO, there's one by IBM, uh, and the beauty of the design thinking methodology is that it can be adapted to a lot of different scenarios, which is why there are so many different models available as well. So this particular model has 5 stages. We start with empathize, which is about understanding the problems and needs of the user and the context. The second step is defining, where we define the main problem area. The thing with complex problems is that it might seem like there are a lot of issues, there are a lot of challenges. However, when we follow this process, we are able to look into a lot of information, analyze them, and reach one main problem or root cause. And then after defining what this root cause is, we move on to the ideation phase, which is we move on to the ideation phase, which is where we focus on generating as many ideas as possible. It is about uh, quantity and not quality. And from there, we again select the most appropriate solutions that bring the most value to the customer and move on to the prototyping phase, where we give the solution a tangible form to communicate between people, to explain your ideas and express how the solution would solve the issue. A tangible expression is quite important. And then this prototype is tested with users. It is tested with users, and then according to the reviews, the prototype is reiterated to make it better. So design thinking is about basically falling in love with the problem and then finding a solution for it. It is non-linear, where it's not necessary for someone to go from phase 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. You can keep going back and forth according to the needs of the project. For example, during the defining phase, there are often times when we realize that we need to dig deeper into a certain issue or a certain problem statement, and then we go back to the research phase. We go back to understanding the challenge itself. Similarly, as I mentioned before, the prototyping and testing phase itself is cyclic, because we constantly think about making the prototype better. This whole design thinking process can last anywhere from a day to months. And for some projects, that is important, and a lot of bigger corporations are able to do this. But there are also certain scenarios in which we require a small compact form of this, which is where we have design sprints coming in. In design sprint, it is similar to design thinking, but in this, it is a very straightforward framework. Usually, it's a 5-day framework. where we begin with understanding, again, the problem and the user. And then moving on to immediately sketching out solutions for it. Again, the same case as design thinking methodology. We focus on generating a lot of ideas because innovation comes from exploring and thinking out of the box. That is why quantity is of importance over here. Then we have the deciding stage where we select the most appropriate uh, solution according to the problem. And there are various tools in this whole workshop or sprint to assist in all of these stages. Um, so, uh, for example, in design sprints, often one of the tools we use in a deciding phase is the impact versus effort versus impact matrix. So it is not just about creative thinking, but also about using analytical thinking to find the best solution for the particular problem. Then we move on to the prototyping stage and the testing phase as before. Um, so a small difference between design thinking methodology and design thinking sprints of a solid framework sprint is that uh, over here we focus on validating the solution. It is about validating whether the assumptions we made about the problem statement or a certain feature of the product is correct or not. And it is about refining the prototype to then move on to the final designing. So, as I said before, design thinking is something that I feel is not just limited to designers, since it has the capacity of finding the balance between customer needs, um, the business needs, and the technologically whether it is feasible or not. Which is why, of course, it is used in product design and whether it be digital products or industrial products. It also has a great importance in businesses, organizational challenges, campaigns, marketing, sales, innovation design, and even in my case, I used it for designing workshops and training modules. So the second part of it I would like to talk about is the enterprise tools. Um, so before my master's degree, and even I think up to a point in my master's degree, I had only been looking into, or had only been exposed to the app development or tool development of customer-centric products. However, I saw a new side of app design over here, which was the enterprise tools. So during my internship with Siemens Healthineers, I happened to work on these in-house developed enterprise tools. Our user groups were from different business units and functions of the company itself, like order and purchase, education and training, compliance team, etc. And the focus over here was on efficiency and productivity. So of course, since we are building apps, we had to consider the user experience. We had the same design principles while designing those apps. However, we also had to make sure that these apps were simplistic in nature, since the learning curve is very different from that of a consumer-centric app. And the focus over here was always on the workload efficiency of the employee. Um, so, um, so yes, during my internship, actually, the team that I was working with was an innovation lab. And the innovation lab had basically taken up the role of digitalization of a lot of their work processes. So we often got requests from various business units for apps that could do this and that and a lot of things. And due to the very fast-paced digitalization drive, we undertook the rapid prototyping principles instead of normal product design development process. So in this, we had very quick iterations of the prototype, followed by user testing, getting the feedback again, and then iterating over and over again until we have the final product. And in our case, we were not designing complete products, but instead we had MVPs, which is a minimal viable product, which basically represents the product, but it is not complete in an essence. So as you can see in the top image, when I talked about prototypes in the design thinking workshops, those were there for validating certain aspects of the product, whether it be the desirability, the usability, or the functional aspect of it. However, when we were working in this aspect, we were developing these minimal viable products which need to have all three of these. So the approach we took was that we selected the most core functions that were needed by the user, and accordingly we chose to develop those elements of the application, and then moved on from there into scaling it. So this is just a timeline of how our rapid prototyping process happened. We would have workshops to understand, sketch, and decide. Usually these would last either a day of a 1-day session or a 2-day session. And then we would immediately get into the prototyping and development side by side. So instead of the normal development process where we get done with the whole designing and then we move on to the development phase, we over here we did this simultaneously in order to have a faster process, and then we could tackle a lot of prototyping use cases. I guess during my time in the company, which was about 4 months, I worked on 3 of these apps, along with some other work as well. So these are pretty fast, and yeah, it was quite interesting to work on rapid prototyping because, as I mentioned, that the prototyping, the designing, and the development was all happening simultaneously. So we couldn't have different teams doing everything. It was a collaborative effort where my team had designers as well as developers. So I had to learn a bit of coding. The developers learned principles of design, thinking, UX architecture, in order to collaboratively work on these applications. So that was how my internship happened. So this particular project is what I took up for my master's thesis. As I mentioned before, my team was handling the enterprise tools, rapid prototyping, and what they wanted to do was tap into the generative AI based enterprise tools as well. So the company had just finished a couple, one big tool, or let's say software with generative AI, but that was created in partnership of an external agency. So what they wanted to do was try out making these enterprise tools in-house. And I think at the time I was working there, they had about 10 to 15 proof of concepts, which is basically a step before the complete prototype, where they're still testing out the functionality aspects of the product. But what we realized what I heard from my team was that they were having a lot of challenge in the process itself. So the design objectives that were coming from the users, they were not able to make a sense of it. From there, they also had issues in terms of mm, failure. There was a high failure rate, and there was no such process at that point. So my project was essentially to design the process for developing the Gen AI based enterprise tools. So the process I took for this was, it also followed the design thinking methodology. The As I mentioned, that the design thinking methodology is quite flexible, and it is up to the user to bend it or make use of it. So you might notice that I have a few different terms that I use that is slightly different from what is used in the industry, and that really is dependent on the user and how they are comfortable working with the methodology. So I began with the discovery phase, in which I did my user research, for which I talked to the stakeholders who had worked on the generative AI based products previously, including there were coders, there were product owners, there were cloud architects, and other people. And after the interviews, I was able to put together stakeholder personas, which is basically one of the design thinking tools where we are able to analyze the needs and requirements and challenges faced by the users or the stakeholders. I also used Journey Map to document the whole journey of the application development. I'll talk about the journey maps later. From there, it went on to defining the define stage, where I had a lot of points on which areas I could work on. And then amongst all of these, the most suitable one or the most impactful one was chosen, which was chosen using the how might we statement, which I'll also talk about later. Then there is the ideation phase. I looked into inspiration outside. In this stage, actually, I went back to my research phase and talked more with developers and designers to understand how the process should be. And then comes the development phase. Over here, since my project was about a process, there was no tangible outcome that I could see at that point, which is why there are certain tools that allow us to be able to imagine how intangible solutions should be. Two of these tools are value proposition canvas and service blueprints. So I won't get into the whole process, but to just share some parts of it. This is how the journey of the product development was put together. After talking to all the stakeholders, I put this all together with after an analysis of all the conversations. Now, usually the journey maps reflect a certain individual's interaction with a product or a service. However, in this case, because there were so many stakeholders, I had to map all of them out and see exactly where and how their how they come into the picture in terms of this application development. Along with that, a journey map is very useful to understand where the users are facing problems. So because we divided into stages, we are able to pinpoint at what stage exactly is the user facing a challenge. So when I was putting this together, I realized that the challenges were of different kinds. And instead of just analyzing their emotions through the journey, I looked into where the high risk areas were throughout the process. And this was put together, as I said, after my conversations with all the different stakeholders. So these were some of the things that came up from the interviews, analysis of the stakeholders, personas, and the journey maps. The first being that the users' needs were not being communicated well enough, and because of that, uh, when they were planning the project, the design objectives also did not reflect the user needs properly, which meant that the KPIs were again misaligned. From there, we also understood that the process itself followed a waterfall model, which basically means that the process was divided into phases, and there were no overlaps in the phases. So after a phase was complete, the output of that became the input of the next phase, and so on and so forth. What happened because of this is that there was very little communication between different departments. And this meant that there was miscommunication, and a lot of information was also lost during the handover. There was also, at the end of the whole process, we realized that there were a lot of legal and compliance issues. We realized that because this is generative AI we are talking about, there's a lot of issues concerning what data can be used or not used in these cases. And in case of security reasons or legal issues, a project might be shelved after being completely developed, which is a waste of resources and time. So the question came up about how do we prioritize the right use cases in that case? How do we evaluate them? And these were basically all the insights and and my understanding of the system and the challenges. So from here, I was able to formulate one how might we statement. Now, how might we statement sort of becomes the bridge between the problem area and the solution area. As I mentioned before, there might be a lot of problems in the challenge you're dealing with. However, it is important to select a particular pinpoint a particular aspect of it so that you do not get lost when you move into the solution space. And that is where the how might we statement comes into place, which describes what problem you're choosing to move ahead with, who is it for, and also what will be the impact of it. So my how might we statement became how do we design a standardized approach to Gen AI based digitalization use cases within Siemens Healthineers for the multiple stakeholders in order to increase clarity and mitigate risk. Now, I chose a semi-standardized approach or the framework for it because I realized that there needs to be a balance between creativity as well as because of the constraints that we work in our team. It was important to also have some structure to it. And that is how I reached the point of designing a design sprint, because it has that balance as well. So after looking at some other inspiration of frameworks like Agile, SDLC, there's creative problem solving and other sorts of design thinking processes and frameworks, I've put together the final solution, and this was a new journey imagined after the ideation phase. Yeah, so there were parts to the solution itself. So the first one was about redesigning the very first point of the process, which is how we collect use cases from the users or the business units. So as I mentioned, we were working for many of the business units and functions, and they would send in their requests about what they would like to have. The problem with that was that the user group, they would often not have enough. They would often phrase their requests in well, basically they did not have the technical knowledge of how do we say whether we want something for image creation, generative AI based image creation for marketing, or do we want something for analysis of certain kind of reports. So after talking to the other stakeholders, I put together a guideline on how the business unit should be submitting their requests. And all of the information that is collected at this point reflects the information that the other stakeholders require during the development phase of the application. So this was the first part of my solution. The second and third part of the solution came in the planning and analysis stages, right before the designing. So initially, the evaluation of use cases, whether they should be sent into the designing and development phase, or whether it should be set at that point. That was decided by the IT strategy team by themselves. However, they had a lot of questions. As I said, that a lot of miscommunication was happening. A lot of the right information was not passed along. So in this stage, I designed the design sprint itself so that this sprint could bring together specialists. So specialists from the design team, development team. I guess this image is slightly wrong, but the AI specialist as well, along with the user itself. They would all come together to understand through the structure, through the framework and activities of the design sprint, whether a project is feasibly and viably a good option to go through. So as I mentioned before, I looked into all the information that is required for the development and designing and development. So some of the things were about what kind of software environment would they use. The thing was that the company had tie-ups with Copilot. They were still in talks with some other companies like with OpenAI and other options. So it was only through the collaborative effort of the design development and AI specialist team would they understand what the requirement was. And in order to explain what the requirement was, the user also had to be there. So that was basically the idea behind bringing people together for this design sprint, and talk about the technical needs of the project, the security concerns. In Europe, there are some very tight regulations in terms of employee data. In US, similarly they have a lot of regulations for the medical information of patients and people. So to consider all of this, and along with that, there was also it was also about the business viability. So what would be the projected user group strength? Is the effort worth the impact? What would be the cost and budget requirements? All of it was put together into a guideline, and that would be used for evaluating whether a project should be taken forward, and if the project should be taken forward, is it of top priority, or should we focus on something that has a higher impact? So so that evaluation happened during the design sprint, and then along with this, the design sprint would also help in understanding what would be the requirements in terms of project planning for the design and development team. What kind of data would they need? When would they need it? What sort of so the data, before it can be trained, it has to be cleaned, and there are all these other aspects of it that the team would collaboratively decide, which would help essentially for the IT strategy team to make the final plan for the development. So this was the final design sprint framework. It was a lot of elements was borrowed from different areas, different other frameworks. The red portions are where I changed the sprint structure itself to reflect the needs of that particular this particular collaborative effort. So it is not just about understanding the user needs, but also about what kind of project, what kind of outcome are we looking into. And then we have the defining phase where we have to define what the risks are going to be, whether the impact, what the impact is going to be, things like that. And then all of these are evaluated. I added a new phase, which was the evaluation phase, where all of these stages, all of these information would be basically checked, like the impact versus risk. Is it worth it? Does it clear the compliance criteria? Again, there is a guideline which says what like if the product is going to be used in America, there's a separate guideline for the rules and regulations and the legal elements over there, and there are different ones for Europe as well. And then according to this, all the different ideas would be then compared, and the best one out of them with the least risks and higher impact would be chosen. And then we have the same prototyping and testing phases. As you can imagine, prototyping generative AI based projects where testing the functionality is not really possible in a day. We use tools like storyboarding, role play to understand how it would integrate in the workforce. And then we get a feedback from the user, and the users are also a part of the workshop to see whether their needs are addressed, and whether the design elements and the design objectives reflect their aspirations or their challenges. So this was a 3-day framework, and I developed, there were already some existing tools and activities for each of these phases, but I also developed some additional activities and tools for this. So that was my project. And to wrap up this session today, I wanted to share some of my favorite elements of design thinking workshops and some of the activities that we do. So firstly, what I really like about these workshops is the play and work element of the workshop itself. So there's this one activity called the icebreaker in the very start of a workshop, where it doesn't have to, like, you start at a very casual setting, a very light-hearted setting, to understand who the other participants are, to basically get to know them, also have an understanding of how exactly might their thinking work. So it could be as simple as taking a post-it and drawing something that represents you. So the workshop that I did during my time here, they were all online, and we were using a lot of these online tools like Miro and Mural. And it was so much fun seeing people draw on screen, terrible drawings, but something that really represented them. And we would all have a laugh together and start the session on a very happy and positive note. Then we also have an activity called Crazy 8 for the ideation phase, where we basically we have a very short time set, maybe a minute or two, and we quickly chalk out, sketch out small ideas for the problem. And it is about instant, whatever comes to your mind, and the ideas that come out are sometimes insane, but they're all really helpful in putting together the final solution. So the second thing that I really like about design thinking, and this is something that is not a design thinking principle, but I really feel that it should be one of them, which is storytelling. Um, so there's this one exercise, which is the sailboat exercise. I would like to share a story about this one. So in one of the projects I was working, we were interviewing some of the a company's employees, and it was about an organizational design challenge. And the employees were very shy to share the challenges they were facing or the problems they were having, which is fair because you do not want to badmouth your employer. However, when we immediately take this format where we sketch out a boat with an anchor, there's wind, and there's like a goal, which is the island. And we started to ask them, imagine that you all were in this boat. Now, what do you think is the anchor that is pulling you down at this point? What do you think is like a big iceberg that you are afraid to hit? What do you think is the wind that is pushing you towards your goal? Once we started using these analogies and started some storytelling principles, we were amazed to see how much the employees were able to share, and that's yeah, it was quite interesting. The second thing is story that I would like to share is the storyboarding, which again comes into play during the prototyping stage, where yeah, it's so much fun to see people sketch out how a solution is going to solve the problem. And oftentimes, because these are collaborative workshops, everyone is not a designer, so everyone may not have the right um, ability or the capacity to sketch out a solution. And these different ways basically help them express themselves. And yeah, everyone is allowed to have terrible sketches, stick figures if they want, which breaks down barriers and pushes people to basically come up with solutions. And then the final thing is collaboration. Um, so there are a lot of these tools in design thinking where you have to put together a lot of information. Like the one in the image over here is an empathy map. And the thing about empathy maps is that we fill out what a user says, does, feels, and thinks. Now, if I'm working on it by myself, it might happen that I can only come up with one of the things that he thinks, but then five of the things that he does. But the beauty of these workshops is about a lot of people coming in together and everyone putting in their ideas. Uh, so it is okay if you cannot see the whole picture, but when everyone comes together, you are able to build the picture together, and that is one of the things that really is at the core of design thinking. And the next one I would like to share is the dot voting activity, where say if we are talking about selecting one main problem, or we're talking about selecting one main solution. Oftentimes what happens is if we are trying to select it through discussion, um, and everyone has put in their ideas and opinions, in a group with a lot of hierarchies, what happens is people often select the idea of, say, the highest power person in the group or the senior most person in the group. But what happens in dot voting is that it is anonymous. So people can put in, they can select ideas that really talk about the best solution, and it is not influenced by any sort of power play or anything. So yeah, that was the final tool that I wanted to talk about. And this marks the end of my session today. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Kanisha. That was really a lot of information in such a short time. Thank you so much for that. So I know a lot of our attendees today, a lot of things they have heard for the first time, a lot of new terminologies, new concepts. Uh, so we'll just wait for a few seconds before we have some questions coming in. Before we start the Q&A, I would just like to remind everyone that we are hosting a 3-day boot camp. And that will be in, just give me 1 second. So the first boot camp is going to be in Kohima, where our attendees will be able to explore tribal culture, indigenous knowledge, cultural sustainability, and local tribal economy through art, design, and technology with the communities of Kohima. We are organizing this with the support of Woven Threads, our partners in Nagaland. And then just after that, the next part of the bootcamp, the next 3 days from October 6th to the 8th, we will be in Ukhrul, and our partners are Ishi, a youth-led organization based in Ukhrul. So we would like to invite all the attendees, and if you know anyone who would be interested in this bootcamp in Kohima and Ukhrul, they can register and express their interest for this. So we can then start with the Q&A session. The first question I'd like to ask Kanisha is like, you studied textiles and then you wanted to explore. So what was the difference that you found in the way you learned, let's say, like the way you were learning things, if I can put it that way?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So was there any difference in the mode of studies that you were studying? Because you were saying there was design thinking and there was this sprint-based approach where you were constantly, like doing it again and again.
So one of the things, one of the major differences between my textile design education and my strategic design education, I would say, is the collaborative work. So during my bachelor's, I think most of my work was completed individually, and that is how a lot of the art projects were. It was about developing your own creative uh, skills and things like that. Whereas during my master's degree, all of my projects were done in a team. Um, and to think about strategic design is that people from varied disciplines were pursuing that. So I've worked with uh, developers. I have worked with people from the business administration background, from economics background, architects. Um, so really, that was one of the biggest differences, and it was about, I guess. Now thinking back at it, I wish we had worked in more collaborative work during my textile design project as well, my degree as well, because that is really what is indicative of how things happen in the industry as well. So yeah, one of the biggest difference was the individual projects versus the collaborative projects.
Yeah. Guys, you can put your questions in the chat. And so far, let's just check. We are still waiting on. Okay, so we'll just move on. So, what I'd like to ask you, what do you think you're going to do with this knowledge now that you have about strategic design? Do you have a plan of what you want to do, or if you have any plans to, help your community or anything, something like that?
I just came back to India, so I'm still seeing how I want to go forward with uh, my newly formed skill set and everything. Um, Also, the industry in Italy and Germany that I saw was very different from that of India as well. So over there, a lot of strategic designers are uh, the part of the municipality or the governance and those places, which is not yet seen that frequently in India. There are obviously bigger corporations that act as consultants in these projects. So I am interested to see how this skill set would be useful for project in the public domain. Yeah.
Right. And did you also feel like that this domain has also in the last few years has picked up, and a lot of people are thinking of it as a specialization? Like you also came to
Yeah.
know about it, somehow, and then you were like, okay, let me see this. So,
Yeah, it is definitely picking up right now. I would say in India it is still quite slow. And uh, the number of times people have asked me what is strategic design, I cannot even count. Um, Even when I was going to study, now that I'm back, people still wonder what strategic design is. So it's definitely taking a lot of time. But yes, it's reflected. I guess multinational corporates are faster in approaching and in accepting, or in rather in having this approach in their team and their processes. Um, what else was your question? Sorry.
no, this was exactly my question. Like, have you seen that this field of study has become more popular over the last couple of years? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So I feel the same. Like, when we had when I was going to study design, people were like, "What are you going to do? Are you going to like make clothes? And are you going to fashion and things like that?" And it was a hard time. You couldn't explain, and you had to like sometimes you just say, "Okay, yeah, yeah, I do fashion." Or like if it was your parents or relatives, then you take some time and explain. But over time, now people know, and everybody has kind of adapted and adopted design, and a lot of companies they have in-house designers now for these things. And I've seen a similar trend for strategic design and also environmental studies and
right.
like specialists who do sustainable design and uh, green buildings and these things. So I think these things will be on the forefront, and we should be aware of these things. What people are going into, rather than okay, let's stick to our traditional education and let's hope something happens later on.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice to see so many. I was happy to see so many Indians in Italy and Germany exploring all these different sectors as well. Um, like, yeah, the number of Indians outside who are looking into these different courses, because these courses are not very commonly found in India. So I would definitely hope that it is. Well, there are students as aspirants in this line. I would definitely hope that the companies also pick up so that we are able to come back to India and practice all of this for our country. Yeah.
Yes, yes, I'm sure, definitely. Because as I said with other studies, like with, let's say, environmental studies, now companies have to hire someone from the environmental
Mm.
background to make sure that their projects are environmentally compliant.
Yeah.
All right. So I don't see, I think people, have a lot to take on and understand from today's session, even okay, finally, we have Sham, who asks, how do you feel about being a person from a tribal community? Do you think there's a connection between design thinking and the tribal community?
Mm. Um, I was actually thinking about this while preparing the presentation as well. Um, I, I was not able to see any direct correlation, but I do see a lot of similarities in the approach to design thinking and tribal indigenous knowledge, like collaboration, a holistic approach to problem solving. It's tribal communities and all these indigenous knowledge systems. If you look into it, they consider people, the environment, the interaction between people, the whole context. Um, yeah, the nature. So all of it is put into consideration, and that is reflected in how the traditions that in the tradition that we see today. And that is exactly the approach that we are taking in design thinking today. Uh, Previously, it was about designing just one artifact. Right now, we are thinking about the artifact and the interaction it would have with its user. The artifact and the interaction it would have with the maker as well, with the environment, with the nature. How would it impact uh, the nature? Are we using the right materials for it? Where are we sourcing the materials from? So I would say these are some of the principles of design thinking that I see correlates with indigenous knowledge knowledge systems as well. Mm, yeah, and I mentioned collaboration as well. Yeah, there's a symbiotic balance in how things used to be in older traditions, and that is also there coming back in design thinking, where people from different specializations come together for to design, uh, like to co-create the solutions. So yeah.
Right. I just would like to add a very small question, addition to that question. Did you meet other tribal students or other indigenous people from like anywhere uh, uh, from the world that were in like studying these courses at studies?
Um, no, I did not. So so I had hosted one tribal design meet in Milan, and yeah, we there were some people who were interested. I think there was one or two people who were interested from the tribal community from other countries. However, the day of the meet, there was a transportation strike, and people could not turn up. So I wasn't able to meet them, but I can't recollect. If I cannot recollect which country she was from right now, but I was not able to have a conversation with her or meet her. So yeah, I wasn't able to meet any other person uh, from any other country. Yeah, that is, yeah.
Right. Okay. So, guys, we'll just take the last question. And I think you have already answered it. So, we'll just keep it short. Uh, Mayank Prasum Turki, he asks, what's the difference between design education in India versus Milan?
Um, I, so one of the things that all all of us Indian students over there noticed was the way um, that it's not just a design education, but the education system itself. The way they sort of encourage students. So in India, what was my experience and some other Indian friends over there, our experience was that we were often told what was wrong in during our projects. Um, in, and in Italy, and I have also talked about had this conversation about the education system with other people from other countries, and people from Germany, Italy, and France. They said that they were pushed to explore what was right, instead of being told what was wrong. So that was one of the biggest differences, I would say, in the education system here and there. Um, yeah, yeah.
All right. So with that, guys, we have come to the end of today's session with Kanishta. Kanishta, thank you so much for spending your evening with us. I was almost confused, like, okay, what is she is she in Italy? Is it morning or evening? So yeah, as you said, you're back. It's evening. So thank you for spending your evening with us, and I hope our attendees today have a lot to learn from your experiences. So before we go, I would just like to tell everyone about the session that we're going to have tomorrow. So tomorrow we are going to have sustainable design from Simlipal Forest, and our speaker will be Shakuntala Mandi, and she's a Santal from Odisha. So do join in tomorrow, and we'll hopefully have a great session. And I hope it will not be late by a few minutes as we were today. So thank you so much, Kanishta. And with that, we will be leaving the room, and we shall hope to see you all tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you.